Abandoned ship. We're not caring about this car. We're thinking about the next year.
Exit clauses, yada, yada, yada.
Hulkenberg is the blue shell right now. Angle grinder guy, he gets a raise.
There you go.
Whoa.
He gets both salaries.
There you go.
What are they doing with the 5th and 6th seats?
Yeah, it's just Weenie Hut Formula One Junior now.
They don't fire up the same way that F1 cars do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tyred Boys podcast, coming to you at the beginning of the 2025 season. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone, for our second season doing the Tyred Boys podcast. As Justin said, we're leading up to the F1 season here. We've got preseason testing coming up shortly, so we wanted to just go through a little rundown, some off-season stuff, kind of expectations leading in, some of those different changes in lineups and things to expect in the upcoming season. But Justin, I'm excited to be back. I'm happy to be here with you, man. I'm ready to get rocking and rolling.
I'm ready to get rocking and rolling as well. It's been a long wait. It's been a long wait since the end of the 24 season, with McLaren ending as the Constructors Champions and Max Verstappen ending as the Drivers Champion, making it four back-to-back, plus two backs. So yeah, really just excited to get into more racing. We had I guess it was like an inaugural pep rally before the start of the 2025 season to see new liveries, new driver lineups. They were definitely testing out some jokes there as well. So I think like a very hype start to the 2025 season, and it just makes me, just excited to get into it. I'm happy to be back because doing this pod means that we have racing on the way. So yeah, just stoked for 2025 season.
No, I'm right there with you. I think everyone else who's been following along with F1 is just as antsy and on the edge of their seat for the upcoming season as we are. So for all of you listeners out there, we're excited to just share this upcoming season with you, our thoughts and everything. And we'll start that off by going right into the quick hitters. So to lead into it with just some general motor racing here, some IndyCar news that ties into F1. We have one of our lovely part-time commentators, F1 post-race recap broadcast talent, Will Buxton, going over to IndyCar. He'll be there with James Hinchcliffe. And there is another gentleman, Townsend Bell, who will be doing the main booth talent for them through the IndyCar season. So exciting for Will Buxton to have that crossover. It's been neat having James Hinchcliffe on the F1 broadcasts. I think he brings a cool perspective for the races he's at. So it'll be kind of an extra little reason to check out more of the IndyCar broadcasts and everything throughout that year. And it will be relatively easier to do so if you're a big IndyCar person. There was some announcements about IndyCar Live and some of the updates that you can get for that, similar to the F1 TV app. So there's a place that you're able to get all of your IndyCar kind of watching, rewatching practices, qualifying sessions, onboard cameras, highlights following the races. So very similar to what F1's doing. And it's been kind of neat during the off season to follow along with some of this IndyCar news, with how they're kind of trying to grow their brand. They're bringing in some F1 broadcast talent to try and grow and maybe get some of that F1 audience over to IndyCar a little bit more as well. They had some really awesome commercials that they had put out during the end of the NFL season, and including the Super Bowl, where they had Alex Palou, Joseph Newgarden. I think Alexander Rossi was the third person that or no, I think it was Pato Award. I take that back about Alex Rossi, but three of the different IndyCar drivers highlighted in these commercials. So I think it's an exciting time for IndyCar to try and grow that audience a bit more, and pretty exciting to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'll just say one thing about Will Buxton. It's fun to hear that a Formula One romantic is going to be joining the team on the IndyCar broadcast. They are just so high octane in even the way that they cast the races. So it'll be fun to hear Will try and find his footing in what is a chaotic place to be. Often it's a TriCast for the IndyCar races, which is interesting. So I think it'll be fun to hear how he does in that kind of environment. He does great like hosting. He does great on the grid walk. So yeah, it'll just be fun to see him kind of trying on a different hat, and particularly in IndyCar, like I said, the cast is very different to the two car. Very all right, I'll give you this one, Aaron. It feels like the Formula One broadcast is more LCK, where it feels like then the IndyCar broadcast is maybe a little more chaotic. Maybe like you could liken it to another region of the world, but like you see what I mean. Where the Formula One broadcast, it's a little more like a little more buttoned up, a little calmer. You know, they try and have some more even takes, these kind of things. So just hearing Will slotting into that very fast paced IndyCar broadcast, I think is going to be really fun. He is one of the personalities that I look towards, excuse me, on the Formula One grid to have just a good take, something that is basically he's just a good mind to listen to and hear his opinion on driving and racing. So I think it's a great addition to that team for a growing IndyCar, something that's had RI more and more over the years. Obviously, a bunch of overlap going on. So yeah, I think to my mind, this is a slam dunk because Hinchcliffe the other way, to my mind, a slam dunk as well. I really enjoyed what he brought to the Formula One cast and like their like pre-shows and all of these things that they would do. So yeah, I'm just excited for Will and IndyCar moving forward.
Yeah, I think, and I agree with you. I think there's that kind of little bit of difference between the broadcasts, but I think what will be the most entertaining is seeing how Will Buxton reacts when Santino Ferrucci starts swinging on someone. That's when he'll really he'll really be a true IndyCar broadcaster. The first time he has to do play by play on some driver fights in the pit lane. So I think that'll be no, I think it'll be a great addition. I think it ties the fandoms together a little bit more, which on both ends I think is a productive way to grow the sport and grow motorsport in general. So very very exciting thing. I'm looking forward to hearing him on the broadcast and checking out more of the IndyCar this year. Um, another reason with Prima Racing, who's been in Formula Two and Formula Three, having their own IndyCar team this year, I think that also brings a bit of that F1 and that Formula um, just atmosphere to IndyCar. Even the livery that Robert Schwartzman they announced for Prima Racing with him, it's like a super Formula One kind of livery. It's not um it's like specific to the team colors, their designs and everything, with the sponsors being more of a highlight as opposed to seeing guys out there in the full yellow DHL, the DHL Honda out there in the circuit. So it's kind of cool to see them bringing that different kind of vibe. And Prima Racing also signed Roman Grosjean as one of their reserve drivers for the upcoming season. So kind of cool to see a little bit more of that crossover. That last little bit being that Arrow McLaren, the IndyCar team, was finally fully, like, all of their shares were bought out by the McLaren F1 team, so they have full ownership from the McLaren F1 and IndyCar. So kind of putting those all under one umbrella together in terms of ownership and everything, as opposed to having, I think it was 75% of that Arrow McLaren team being owned by separate parties. So a kind of consolidation of the McLaren Motorsport family.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and just even more crossover. We know there were some names, names up for the sorting hat for IndyCar drivers to for possible drives in Formula One, and obviously vice versa, drivers from Formula One going that way. So yeah, just even more overlapping and brand like I'll use the word like codependence with like a positive connotation where they're like kind of helping each other in some way. As we know, the Formula One market in North America has been growing. IndyCar, the premier single seater series in North America. So yeah, to me it just makes sense, right? All of this, all of these partnerships in the news.
Yeah, it definitely is just about the like promoting like that growth in the industry, in the sports and everything. And I think that all these little tweaks will uh, kind of in their own way just boost that growth. Even if it's in smaller margins, it'll be a good way to grow as a whole. It's funny though
Mhm.
that you said sorting hat. I don't know if you did that on purpose, because my next quick hitter was that Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter movies, is going to be one of the celebrity racers in a Formula E event that's going to be happening in Miami. He's going to be it. This event is giving celebrities the opportunity to experience driving some of the electric race cars for this Formula E event. Um, and he will be driving for Envision Racing in that event around Miami's Hard Rock Stadium. So probably using a similar circuit to what F1 uses or around that same time. Um, but yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool little thing to have a celebrity event. I can't imagine that really happening in Formula One. Um, maybe Formula Two, you could have something with those speeds of cars, but from what I was reading, he's going to have to go under some pretty extensive training and preparation, simulator work, and everything before hopping into that Formula E car. But a very cool opportunity for him to get that drive, and I'm curious to see who some of these other celebrity drives will be for that event.
Just to pigeonhole him into the one role that in my mind he played. It's the only one. I bet in his head he will be referring to his race car as the Thunderbolt 2000. He'll be saying go Thunderbolt, go Thunderbolt, go. Yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe my dream celebrity drive would be Tony Stark getting into a single seater. That'd be pretty neat. I mean, it's happened before. I'm looking forward to it happening a second time. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe he'll be a part of the event. But Envision, their livery is green, so sticking with
Oh, that's cool.
that Slytherin vibe. But now I think that's a pretty cool like event, and I'm looking forward to checking it out, seeing some of these celebrities in the cars. Hopefully, there won't be too many incidents or people who aren't paying attention during those training sessions.
Sure.
But now I'm sure that anyone who's going to be involved is a motorsport fiend and just ready to get out there and try their stuff. Um, but one of the formula, as we are kind of moving towards Formula One quick hitters, Kevin Magnussen, Formula F1 driver, of course, for the Haas team, is driving now in IMSA with the BMW team. So I'm glad to see him still going out on track. I'm not shocked to see him in other racing series. He had done rally cars and some other drives and whatnot when he was out of F1 for a little bit. So cool to see him still in the racing scene as a whole. Big K Mag guy. You love to see the first guy to ever get a ban from penalty points. We'll probably see the second one this year when we get to talking about the rules updates. But yeah, pretty cool to see K Mag out there again.
Yeah, agreed. And I feel like sometimes we have an issue in the way we talk about drivers that are like leaving the sport. We talk about them as though it's like their obituary, like they're dead or something. But in reality, like, no, they are racing's hottest ticket. So they are like, they're going to get slurped up somewhere. Like, if it is within them to continue driving, a lot of
Right.
times I imagine they would have the pick of the litter of offers. They could, maybe even just walk on to a team, put a team together, what have you. So yeah, I think often we paint it as some kind of obituary when in reality it's like, no, it makes sense that he's going to go race another Premier Series because they are like technically the cream of the crop. They're the best in the world, right? That's like what it would be.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we've also seen a few different drivers recently in Formula One that when they were leaving the sport, particularly as like veteran Formula One drivers, they were
Sure. Yeah,
retiring as
yeah.
a whole. So we saw like Kimi Räikkönen, we saw Sebastian Vettel. Obviously,
Hmm.
that's just two people. We've had other people come and go in Formula One, but a lot of times those were pretty young drivers that didn't have much experience, weren't as ingrained in the community. So when those drivers have that veteran sense, I feel like a lot of them um, aren't as interested in racing in other series other than maybe the one-off kind of events here and there um, that you see, which kind of leads into your quick hitters that you had here, talking about some of those kind of one-off events a little bit.
Yeah, so one thing that I didn't understand based on when the time that I came into Formula One was this idea of like a champion of champions race. Every time it was posed to a Max or a Lewis or a Sebastian Vettel, it would just be like, oh no, like we all race different equipment. It doesn't really make sense. Like, let's move on. And the question just fizzles like there's nothing more than that. So to my mind, I was like, okay, well this must not be like a thing. Well, I learned it was a thing. I'm pretty sure from like the 70s to the like early, I guess you say like the early aughts, like I think it was like 2005, 2006 that they had the last one. I was like, oh, okay. So they like did kind of try and do this where they like bring bit like champions from other series, bring them together, put them all in Camaros, and have them race and like see what goes down. And I had never heard of that before. Like I said, the International Race of Champions, which I thought was pretty funny. It failed for some pretty obvious reasons, where it was like it was geared towards the like NASCAR drivers. Basically, it was all like the cars were geared towards NASCAR, the tracks were geared towards NASCAR, and it was like always Americans that won the race. It was just like so heavily geared towards oval racing, where it was just like, well, is this really a like equal machinery competition? It's like, well, no, if these guys get slotted in, it's kind of easy for them. And just like a bunch of other things, interest and calendar and whatever. But I just thought that was an
Mm.
interesting event to learn about. And then just staying on the NASCAR for 1 second, our boy, the greatest of our generation, Kyle Larson, I was shocked when he did not finish P1 in the Daytona 500. The greatest of our generation, Kyle Larson, finished P17 in the opening race of 2025 for the NASCAR Cup. I
That
mean,
there was a little bit of chaos right at the end,
I don't
but
care.
our boy Colton Herta, who we got to see at the Pocono Raceway in the NASCAR feeder series last year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Finished up in third place. So
That's
young,
our boy.
that's our boy. He had a little shot towards the end, but a P3, not a bad way to start off the year at one of the biggest race NASCAR events of the year. So pretty cool to see that. I was watching towards the end, but yeah, Kyle Larson just. I know he could beat Max in behind any wheel, but he couldn't beat 16 other NASCAR drivers this time at least. So
At
that
least
means
not
there's
this time.
17 NASCAR drivers that are better than Max Verstappen at racing. So
Well, the good thing is he'll have more opportunities. I'm pretty sure they do the Daytona 500 every year, which just like my favorite track on the circuit, we're getting renewed at least one more year. The Belgian Grand Prix, they're bringing it back. So just like Daytona 500, we're evergreen in this regard.
yeah, and so we've got a multiple year extension for the Belgian Grand Prix. We've got 2026, 2027, 2029, and 2031. So a couple more years back to back, then it looks like that rotating European schedule with maybe some tracks being on every other year will kind of start to happen. So that'll be interesting to see what other circuits are kind of as we get renewals announced throughout the year, being able to look at those and say, oh well, we'll get the Belgian Grand Prix in 27, but in 2028 we'll get whatever else that we see throughout the year. So it'll be cool to have that still on the calendar. Unfortunate that it wouldn't be every year. I love Spa. I love the Belgian Grand Prix. It's a fun race and great circuit. So definitely happy to see that locked in for a few more years. Another thing that I'm very happy to see is that the Las Vegas Grand Prix time was bumped up for by a couple of hours for this coming year. It'll be starting at 8 p.m. local time, so it'll only be an 11 p.m. start time here on the East Coast instead of 1 a.m. It's a beautiful thing not having to stay up till the middle of the night to watch one of our home races in the U.S. That's a little bit kooky, so a little bit more reasonable there.
Yeah, that is a little more reasonable, but there are, like the Japanese Grand Prix or the Chinese Grand Prix. I would imagine it's like similar for them the other way. So, people all over the world are having to deal with it, maybe possibly for their home race, depending on where you're at. Australia could be wonky as well. So not bad for just one of our home races. We do have three after all, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean the U.S. is a big country. You get one East Coast, one West Coast, one kind of more central. So uh, pretty
Oh, whoa.
balanced overall. But another update to circuit this year is that there has been a change from the F1 Commission in terms of mandatory pit stops at Monaco. Assuming that will mean two mandatory pit stops, which will kind of shake things up just a little bit more at that circuit since it just needs a little something extra to shake things up. With the lack of passing on track, it'll give more opportunities there. And then the final quick hitter that I had for our first episode of the season is that now we're adding the 11th team in Formula One. We're adding Cadillac in 2026. Well, FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem wants to add a Chinese team into F1 to be the 12th team. 24 drivers on the grid. He's just looking to not just grow the sport, grow the grid, make it really congested for qualifying sessions. I feel like 24 is starting to get into a little big of a grid for the some of the F1 circuits, but hey, I'm not the boss. I'm not the money guy. I'm just here for the entertainment.
I love China. Bring it on. Another problem for the teams to solve. The more the better. Back them all the way up. What's the turn that comes in at Monaco where it's like the little like ba-bump, ba-bump, right at the end before you're on that front straight. Back them up all the way to that.
Yeah, just make it so during qualifying sessions, there's just straight up gridlock around the last corners. Like you almost have to be the last out of the pits for it, because if you aren't, you're getting stopped at that last corner of the circuit way too long. I don't know. I think it's might get a little bit crowded out there. 22 cars might be it. I think we should wait and see how that goes first before we start talking about a 12th team. I think 11 will be a good test ground for that, since we
Sure.
held off on adding an extra team for a number of years now. So I think that'll be an interesting change in itself. 12th team, we'll see down the road.
Yeah, Formula One just like playing hard to get for a little while. They're like, no, no, you can't join us.
Yeah, we have you can't sit with us. We have enough teams. Oh wait, pull up a chair. Here we
You can
go.
sit with us. Oh, we were silly. You can sit with us.
Wait, you have money? But yeah, so that wraps out this week's quick hitters. So a exciting IndyCar season coming up along with the F1 season. Looking into the F1 season though, and some of the off-season changes, some kind of neat shifts of personnel as well as drivers. But Laura Mueller, who works with the Haas team, was announced to be the first female race engineer in Formula One history. So she'll be heavily involved on that side during the races, I believe, with Esteban Ocon primarily. So that's very exciting for her to be his race engineer. It's great to see these women in motorsport. There's also another woman who was very involved with a very popular driver, Angela Cullen, who will be coming back to work with Lewis Hamilton now at Ferrari after previously leaving the Mercedes team. So they have signed his old physio to come back work with him. I think that's great for Lewis. The time that he was working with her seemed to be some of his best and most comfortable years, and I think it's great to have a person who's going to be working so closely with him with the team while he's transitioning to this new team, new style of car, just everything being new, having some comfort and someone that he trusts to be there with him, definitely is a awesome, just positive for Lewis.
Yeah, I agree, but I just wonder who at Mercedes didn't like Angela and hurt her feelings to make her leave the Mercedes camp, but then join back with Lewis when he's with Ferrari. Clearly it was a Lewis. So
Yeah,
I wonder what went down there.
Toto, Bono, what'd you do? No. But yeah, whether either it's neither here nor there, I guess, when it comes down to it. But yeah, definitely nice to have her back with Lewis in Formula One. I think that'll be a big positive for him and Ferrari, just by relation. Um, but looking at some of the other kind of rumor mills and then driver signings for reserve seats, Sergio Perez has been rumored to potentially be up for one of those Cadillac seats. First, it was former Red Bull driver Daniel Ricciardo that was rumored. Now it's former Red Bull driver Sergio Perez being rumored, along with Colton Herta from IndyCar. So it looks like they're starting to try and finalize the lineup, and it makes sense with last year's silly season and everything, with contracts kind of kicking off very early with driver signings in the season. I wouldn't be shocked to see Cadillac try and lock in a couple of drivers relatively early on in the year. Um, Especially if there's opportunities to kind of talk to a number of other F1 drivers that may have contracts available. I think it'll just be a quicker decision to make sure they secure some talented drivers for that upcoming 2026 season. Having a veteran like Sergio Perez definitely helps on that veteran and just understanding of Formula One side. Whether or not you think he's up to the task is kind of that secondary part of it. But I mean, he was still a pretty successful driver with Red Bull, even if not as good as some would have hoped. So
Sure, yeah, I think it's a hopeful grab. He was, competitive in some regards, maybe not like with his teammate, but on other aspects like of the grid and of his racecraft. Yeah, I definitely think it's a worthy pickup. And depending on what kind of contract you sign, they may not lock into anything long. Could just be a one season type deal. So yeah, just interested to see what route they go, who they put next to Colton Herta.
yeah, I think it sounds like from all accounts, Colton Herta is kind of the primary lock there for them. Um, but looking at some of the other teams for the upcoming season with reserve drivers, we've got Zhou Guanyu, who signed with Ferrari to be one of their reserve drivers. So finding his way to stay involved in Formula One, with that being his primary goal of just racing at the highest level. Another real massive signing as a reserve driver, which will probably make things interesting. Franco Colapinto signed with Alpine after it sounds like a significant buyout. It was reported that he has a 5-year contract with Alpine, so there is a lot of speculation that's been going on through the offseason, and kind of unfairly, um, it doesn't sound like he took it to heart too much, but for Jack Doohan, who is just getting his first drive in Formula One, he had the one race at the end of last season, and now has someone signed to be the reserve driver who did show some solid performance in Formula One previously. A lot of people feel like Jack Doohan's on the hot seat there. And I don't know if I necessarily see that. I understand that Formula One has some of its cutthroat aspects of it and everything, but I would imagine Jack would have to do particularly poorly to warrant any sort of driver swap mid-season. Whether you're looking down the road, I think it's that's a different story. Maybe in a year they'll have the two, Franco and Jack Doohan, do testing at the end of the season, or have different markers with the simulators that they're kind of deciding. But at the very least, I'm hoping Jack gets a full season to kind of show his stuff and show what his talent that he clearly has from his campaigns in Formula 2, Formula 3, and everything, to just show what he has to offer.
Yeah, because it would also be like weird behavior from the team side where it's like, okay, so he was just like a name on a piece of paper then to a certain degree until you could get like a better driver, a different contract where you were just like filling the seat for regulation's sake, but you were always going to switch him out. He's not a long term prospect type deal. Yeah, that would be like unfortunate for doing side. You would want him to get his shot.
Yeah, I think he deserves at least one shot, 1 year, one opportunity to do everything he ever wanted. We'll see if he takes the moment or lets it slip. But another person poised to take the opportunity if it arises, Yuki Tsunoda, is officially Red Bull's reserve driver, so still in the V carb or RB seat for next year. But if there's any reason that Max or Liam Lawson are unavailable, he would be the guy to slide up into that seat. So definitely good to see him at least getting that kind of nod from the Red Bull team, even if he doesn't get that full drive. And had Liam Lawson placed over him. I think that's still a little bit of a step in the right direction for you.
Yeah, it's like this weird vote of confidence. It's like a weird like, okay, you're not in the main team yet, but you know what? You can reserve for the main team. If anything happens, you're our guy, Yuki. So like interesting in that regard. Not mad at it. You're right. I think it's a step forward, but I think it's a half step. I think it's a half
Uh,
step forward.
Yeah, half step forward, but I with the expectations for Max's race ban coming up, then I think there it leaves lots of room for opportunity. Maybe Yuki's just gonna intentionally just try to do like buzz buys on Max during like qualifying sessions, try and get him to swear, get some additional penalty points and whatnot thrown on. You never know.
That's
um,
going to be the angle. It's just like how tilted can he make the other drivers?
yeah, so we'll talk about some of those rules in a little bit, but to kind of close out the "Do You Work Here" segment, I just wanted to do a quick kind of driver and team rundown. One interesting thing I saw, which I'm always coming out with the Red Bull and Max Verstappen facts and stats, but uh, a large portion of the grid at some point in time have been a Red Bull Junior driver. So Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Yuki Tsunoda, Liam Lawson, Jack Doohan, and Isaac Hadjar. So 8 out of the 20 drivers, 40% of the grid, have been a Red Bull Junior at some point, which I think just speaks to kind of a little bit of the amazing minds over there at Red Bull when it comes to development. I think they've also like just kind of done it right with the development programs for longer than some of the teams. So I think that's just a pretty wild thing for that many formula or that many former F1 junior Red Bull drivers to be a part of the grid. But of course, a big part of the upcoming season is we're going to have six, uh, can't call them rookie, but young drivers who are going to be
Mm-hmm.
involved with, who don't have a ton of experience in Formula One, which is exciting. We'll have Liam Lawson, Isaac Hadjar, Kimi Antonelli, Ollie Behrman, Jack Doohan, and Gabriel Bortoletto, all coming in for the upcoming season, to partner with some longer standing drivers out there. But yeah, we've got a pretty packed grid. Some other big changes like Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. So just a quick rundown of the teams. From McLaren, we have Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris still. Ferrari, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. With Red Bull, Max Verstappen and Liam Lawson. Mercedes has George Russell and Andrea Kimi Antonelli. We have at Aston Martin the ever young Fernando Alonso and the ever driving Lance Stroll. We have at Alpine Jack Doohan and Pierre Gasly. With the Racing Bulls, Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda. Haas with Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman. Williams with Alexander Albon and Carlos Sainz. And then wrapping it out with the Kick Sauber team, we have Nico Hulkenberg and Gabriel Bortoletto.
Just want to give some notes on the new drivers that you may not know entering into these teams. So on the Red Bull squad, Liam Lawson, depending on when you join Formula One, Liam Lawson may be a new name. Liam Lawson from New Zealand was previously racing Super Formula before entering the reserve role in the Red Bull camp, and then getting his drives for the RB, and then being moved up For the Mercedes side, Andrea Kimi Antonelli from Italy. He was running in Formula 2 previously. Interesting thing about that is he skipped, I believe it would have been from like F4 or whatever like young driver program he was in. He went from F4 right into Formula 2, so skipping a series because he was, reading ahead of his grade level, which is very exciting. For the Kick Sauber squad, Gabriel Bortoleto from Brazil was previously racing in Formula 2, notably capturing back-to-back titles in his Formula 3 campaign and then in his Formula 2 campaign, so winning each respectively, doing it back-to-back. Now, after winning that Formula 2 campaign against Isaac Hadjar, who you see on the grid in the Racing Bulls. Isaac Hadjar from France, previously racing in Formula 2, and like I said, was the main title contender, one of the main title contenders against Bortoleto in that Formula 2 series. They had a really exciting head-to-head throughout the year. Unfortunately, ends in the deciding race. Isaac Hadjar doesn't get much of a shot to take that title away from Bortoleto, but ends up not mattering, gets a seat anyway from his supporting squad that he was affiliated with, you could say, in Formula 2. So really exciting drive. I'm looking forward to see what Isaac Hadjar can do. He's going to be hungry for wins after being taken from him from Bortoleto. And then lastly, Jack Doohan from Australia, previously racing Formula 2. I think that was back in 2022 though, and since then has had like reserve driver roles with Alpine. You've seen him on the desk. You've seen him doing like analysis work on the broadcast as well. So a familiar face, may have some ring rust on him in that regard, but these are your young drivers entering the grid that we're gonna see, for 2025.
Yeah, and also don't forget he semi counts, but Ollie Behrman, who was Kimi Antonelli's teammate with Prima Racing in Formula 2, will also be out there on the grid with Haas next to Esteban Ocon. So he's had a few different opportunities to drive in Formula 1 at this point. So kind of similar to Liam Lawson a little bit in terms of having some of those opportunities already. But it's pretty exciting. Like I think there's a lot of good young talent that's gonna be out there on the grid. I think there's a lot of intrigue in some of these shaken up driver lineups, like you have with Williams, with Albon and Sainz, or Ferrari with Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. There, I think some of those shakeups with people who are already on the grid will be very interesting to see. But very much looking forward to the upcoming season, the kind of shakedown that we'll get this week at the F1 testing in Bahrain. But before that, we did get to see the F1 75 for the 75th year of Formula One event. But before we get into that, we just want to start off this year just saying, if you are new to the podcast, if you're old to the podcast, if for some reason you haven't already hit the like button and the subscribe button, checked us out on Twitter, checked our link tree, that has all the information on where to find our content, where to go to connect with us, and to be a part of our little Formula One community that we have. So thank you for anyone who's listening, and we hope that you'll subscribe and follow along to enjoy the upcoming F1 season with us.
The Tyred Boys podcast goes live the Monday evening after every single Formula One race. So be here, be square. The audio and video versions available next day. That means Tuesday morning. Formula One action in your ears. Join us for it. Thank you very much for supporting. Back to the episode.
Yeah, so the F1 75 event, we had all the drivers, the teams, personalities, We had musical guests. We had livery reveals for the teams. Whether they're going to be the real liveries or not, we'll have to wait and see. But it was a pretty exciting kind of way to lead into the season this year. I know some of the drivers and some of the people were maybe like I don't know, unsure about how it would go since previously every team had kind of done their own individual events. I guess that Williams event app that they had created for one of the previous years is just not a part anymore since they're not doing their individual car reveal and everything. But a a different way to, I guess, lead into the Formula One season, and not too bad. I think there's some room for some tweaks and growth, but overall, kind of a nice way to bring everyone together and get that energy towards the new season going. Um, Without all the individual events kind of spotted around the calendar in February.
Yeah, as far as like an event that is not like a, a points paying event, you could say, it was not bad and really enjoyable. I think it was much better than a like award show. Usually award shows feel like so stuffy and just so weird. I loved how we were like selling the race cars as these like rock stars, the backing with these, just like the anthems to the car as they're like being rolled out. Just very fun. I liked how each one tried something like a little different. We could get into the different styles, but overall it was like I think it was pretty cool as far as like a Formula 1 pep rally goes. That was kind of neat. I'm excited. Like you said, things to change like elements to work on, but yeah, overall I enjoyed myself as just like an overall way to get into the season. And it's better than trying to hit all of these like, okay, this team is this week, this team is that week, this team is that week. They're all trying to like capitalize on like a time, like, oh, Mercedes, we're about to show that car, be here next week. Whatever, man. But like having it all be in one place, just like celebrating Formula One as a whole, seeing the grid at the end, like I think it was pretty neat.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I also do like that it kind of consolidated things, like the livery reveals and little events that the different teams would have in previous years always felt super drawn out and like a little bit excessive in terms of the length of them. They're like, all right, and we're gonna show you the car, but let's hear from our drivers, and they have like 10-15 minutes of Q&A, and they're like, all right, well, we're gonna have a quick break, but then we'll show you the car, we promise. Come back from the break. All right, let's hear from the the technical director about the development of the car. But don't worry, we will show you the car. Yeah, now I like the way they do it. They kept things a little bit more concise, short and sweet. Kind of got to the meat and potatoes of what people wanted to see. And so I think overall the event was pretty good. I was honestly surprised by the number of live music performances they had throughout. Though it was like I was expecting like maybe one or two. Like they bring out all the cars individually. They have a musical act. They while they're getting all the cars lined up, and then they're like, "All right." But no, they had like three or four different musical acts throughout the show. Which hey, if you're going to be going to an event like that to be a spectator and everything, I guess it's kind of cool to get a little mini concert along the way.
Dude, I agree with you in sentiment. it's cool to get a concert along with it. I'm not sure my brain could handle the tone and tempo shifts of each of the performances.
Like we said, some tweaks might be needed.
Tweaks might be needed. I cut them. Get rid of them. That was the only one that felt even remotely like at home was the Aston Martin singer that was doing the like real moody the real like
Mm.
moody kind of like bluesy song. That was great and I felt like fit the like actual like room. Everything else was for some different event. Honestly, just give me Imagine Dragons for the whole thing.
I mean, at the very least, Kane Brown could have changed miles on it to kilometers on it.
Dude,
Like, come on, you're at a Formula One event. What's a mile? It's not a thing. We go by kilometers here. Get with it, Kane Brown. Let's put some kilometers on that truck.
oh my god, that's a hilarious angle, and like my thought only went as deep as like they don't. There's no way these people appreciate this. Just like American, this is like American country. Like what the hell? And you're right, they don't know what a mile is
Yeah, it's a little. Hey, some tweaks for the F-176 event.
for sure.
Um, yeah, but overall, I think a solid event. I'm glad that they did simplify the viewing necessity for me to be able to see everything in one place. And so to talk about some of the liveries and everything, let's get into our winners and losers for the liveries for this upcoming season. Do you want to lead into it here?
Yeah, mine very simple. I just pick one for each because honestly, like big L for all of the teams. Very little of them changing their concept overall. Nothing radically different as far as like delivery design goes. No like crazy color changes or anything like this. So big L for everybody, but it makes sense because the reasonable year to do that would be 2026 where it's like whole new regulations, new new year, new us kind of deal. So not necessarily expecting it in that regard, but I still have to just give the whole. I have to weight the grades because the whole class did so bad that if I don't slide the scale, like none of you are going to graduate. So that's awful. My one winner that I picked was Mercedes because the slick blend of the black and the light blue, super striking. I love how it looks on their car every time they use it. So as far as like the default skin for the Mercedes this year, I'm pleased.
I'm with you on that. I similarly said that blend of the black along with having the silver front for the silver arrows kind of design. I like the blend of the two worlds. I thought that looked really cool. The other couple of liveries that I really enjoyed, the Alpine livery. I like that they had a lot more pink involved. The pink right next to the blue um, without all that carbon fiber kind of poking through. Now, I just think the blue and the pink like contrast looks really good together on their
Okay.
car. The black kind of I feel like tones out some of the pop that it has. So I was a big fan of that. And then the Racing Bulls, I know they've had that like white and blue livery kind of before, but this one felt it reminded me a lot more of that Red Bull Japanese livery that we had a couple years ago. And so I thought that one really popped. The white looks good with the different other Red Bull kind of family colors that were involved there. I thought that was pretty sweet looking. My losers, I'll just jump right into them. And all of them are basically because they just didn't change their designs hardly at all.
Sure.
Red Bull number one, Williams number 2, Ferrari number 3. Williams went with a slightly different blue, and Ferrari went with a slightly darker red. But yeah, same kind of deal there. I wasn't expecting them to change, but I also wasn't like just pumped to be like, oh yeah, exactly the same. So those are my big 3 losers. I thought everyone else kind of middled in terms of slight changes that were generally positive.
Generally positive. What isn't generally positive, in my opinion, is rehashing an old like Halloween costume basically for Aston Martin. They did the whole like James Bond 007 thing when they had like whatever the most like recent Daniel Craig release was, whenever that was. And it may not have even been that one. It may have been like a newer iteration of it. Regardless, it felt like a Halloween costume reuse where they're just like, what do we do for this thing? Let's just fly them in on a helicopter. You know, we could just pretend they're secret agents or something. So they just use the James Bond music again. It's like, all right, we get it. So aesthetically, livery wise, fine, but they rehashed this old idea. So Aston Martin gets more points off the exam for me.
Okay, I think that's definitely a fair point. I liked I don't know, I like the Aston, like the Kick Sauber, but just not enough change for me to really stand out from the rest there.
Fair.
But yeah, so looking forward to seeing those liveries on the grid. One of the other kind of off-season talking points, we had some changes with some of the different rules in Formula One, and primarily looking at this kind of off-season update here. The big things were just kind of things that made the FIA look bad, which was kind of a weird thing, in my opinion, to add into the rule book. Rules where drivers can be deducted world championship points for causing moral injury to the FIA. So things like complaining about stewarding decisions publicly, or trash talking race direction, or things like that, whether it's like drivers being stuck out there under red flag conditions when they're like, nope, keep driving, and drivers are like, oh, this is terrifying, I feel like I'm gonna die. They could be like, oh, well, you're saying something bad about the FIA's race direction, so boom, knocking you championship points. That, along with updates in terms of race bans, championship point deductions, financial penalties for swearing, and different sporting code violations. We'll see. Maybe along with Max swearing, we'll see them tackle the Lewis wearing jewelry whole fiasco again. You never know. They seem to be on a little bit of a war path this season with some of these rule changes.
The moral injury to the FIA, here's an angle that I'll give you that it makes sense for something like this. So it helps to have social media not be able to be like weaponized by the drivers in a way where maybe it shouldn't be to begin with. If you have genuine concerns about the way a race weekend is handled, it seems like there are plenty of opportunities for like a driver to pass that message up the horn and get it heard by somebody that like could take action on it. So immediately having their social media teams like hop on and be like, man, what a dangerous qualifying, you know what I mean? It's like, well, all right, maybe instead of doing that, how about, and this goes to the changing of the Drivers Association leader, Carlos Sainz is now the head of it as opposed to Sebastian Vettel. Hopefully, what you can do instead is like, have more conversations that are driver association to the FIA instead of 20 different tweets, like 20 different drivers' tweets all outing the FIA. Well, maybe let's do it in like a formal report at the end of each race weekend and say, like, hey, these are the things that we may want to have a conversation about. Because having every like Joe Blow on social media, like weighing in on what happened on the weekend, isn't useful to the conversation of like getting the drivers what they need in that conversation and getting the FIA what they need in that conversation. So that to me actually seems reasonable as a way to, if you understand me, just like just kind of shrink that tunnel of conversation where it's like it's such a wide thing. Let's zoom it in a little bit. Let's maybe come from like one particular angle. Like, is that reasonable?
I agree with you for the most part. I don't feel like there's been that many times when drivers are like the ones putting those kind of content and conversations out there anyway. Like typically the drivers, I think, are already, the teams are petitioning the FIA. They're putting in a complaint against another team, whether it's their car design or a situation on track, or like the teams like note these things with the FIA. I don't think I've seen too many things where like a driver has been super outspoken, like trashing the FIA on. I imagine it, if that's going to happen, it happening more during a race, like where
Right.
they're like, hey George, the FIA has said that it was a racing incident, and George is like, oh blimey mate, the FIA is a bunch of wankers. Like, I think that is what they're trying to avoid. Or maybe Max popping off while he's doing a late night sim race and being like, oh man, if this was the FIA, then that would have been blah 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 blah. I don't think those things come up as often outside of the like in the race. And so kind of in connection to their rule about like no more swearing, we can't say bad words and everything, I think if it's going to happen, it's more likely to happen during the race. And so like you can curtail that by adjusting the broadcast, having the people who are in charge of the broadcast make more wise or informed decisions that are in line with your rules and your expectations in terms of what radio messages they put on the broadcast or different things like that. So I think like a lot of these issues that they're concerned about could just be resolved by better broadcast decisions, as opposed to like penalizing teams or attacking drivers because they're frustrated. Like if George is popping off on the radio, like he hit me after he just ran someone off into the gravel, like then sorry, I'm really picking on George today, but
you gave him a full accent. Max didn't get an accent. What the hell?
I can't do a Dutch accent, so
sure.
I can't do a British accent either, but I'm closer. So
okay.
but yeah, I mean, if you're like, if you want to avoid those things like the FIA being criticized to the public, like be a little bit more selective on what you put on broadcast, because I'd say 95% of Formula One audience, like the Formula One audience, is not going back and rewatching like every driver's onboard for the entire race to listen through and hear their radio messages with the team and everything. Like people are watching the primary broadcast, they're watching the race highlights, they're watching those things, and you have a lot more control from race direction with that than you do like trying to take the personality of these drivers, I guess.
I don't know if cursing is personality. I just think they want
That's
to
yeah, I guess that's fair as well.
encourage just a more family friendly environment, but the like conceit is they have the levers that they themselves could make it a more family friendly environment, even while letting Max curse all he wants. You could still get like 10 onboards that you could give of him just like changing mode now, or like whatever it is. You can find something of him not cursing.
Oh, 100%. And
Right, they
there's
have the
plenty
levers.
of plenty of interesting like conversations and back and forth that teams probably have throughout the races that don't get heard that you could fill into some of those spots instead. So yeah, maybe
Exactly.
not that maybe not personality, but just adding additional pressure to the drivers when they're already under high pressure to like they're trying to make the right decisions racing, they're trying to make the right
Hmm.
decisions with their strategies and everything. It's not going to be easy to add in like changing the way that they talk and communicate back and forth when they're in these high pressure, high adrenaline kind of modes. So
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. So, like when you think of these lineups that are like effectively international, right? And here's the element is it is easier to curse in your second language than it is to like say the proper word in your native language. Even if they are like a French native speaker, you have to speak English. Like the main broadcast
yeah,
is English, all your engineers, they're speaking English. Like that is the detriment of having what are known as like international lineups. So you're exactly right. It actually takes more time to like think of what their response is. And they may be very eloquent, beautiful English speakers, but the idea is like it's that extra computational time that their brain needs to try and filter what they have to say. And not only do they have to like find the English, now they can't use the English like while saying the F word. It's like, okay, well now you're just like making it one layer difficult. So
yeah.
it is actually an element that these drivers have to deal with English, whether it's their main language or not. That's what they have to speak in when they are in the car in a points paying event basically. So that's like a beautiful thing to key into.
Yeah, and I just don't think it's a necessary thing to add in. I think that if you, like we've said, if you want to make it family friendly, you want to do that. Hey, you got the F1 Kids broadcasts where they're way more selective about what radio messages they're putting up there. Like
Exactly.
you clearly like you have the tools, you have the ability to do it, so just do it that way. Like if people complain like, oh, I want to hear Max cursing out GP over the radio, then like you're gonna have a couple of unhappy people where as a whole you're tailoring the broadcast kind of how you want to. So it'll be interesting to see how these things kind of come into play, or if they do in the upcoming season, if they kind of ease back on them. But yeah, I mean, we saw them be kind of annoying and weird about Max swearing in post race press conferences and whatnot when he was just like you said, trying to kind of find the words in a language that isn't his first language, and to to kind of go at these drivers about that. I don't know. I think uh, it's not the hill I would die on personally, but hey, I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out this year.
There are a couple of other rules that may not be as morally impactful to the Formula One and their reputation. So fastest lap points getting removed. They found it awkward for people that weren't like in contention to be able to like steal points. They thought it was like kind of odd, actually. So let's take that out. Rule change number 2: driver cooling systems are going to be added to any weekend where it's supposed to be over 31 degrees Celsius. So
yeah.
it's an extra like 20 uh, uh 20 kilos of like drink and the necessary like pipes and tubing, just to keep drivers more comfortable. Something that I'm expecting to see tested this weekend. How will that extra load like factor in? So that's actually, an interesting thing. What are you gonna say?
Well, and with that, I think it kind of it's a very interesting shift because we've actually seen, and I think a shift ahead of more so next year, because with the new regulations, all the changes, all the aerodynamic changes, engine changes, and everything, we're going to see a lot of teams next year, most likely, kind of actively working to reduce weight. A lot of times they go into these new regulations and everything. You end up with cars that they are not as efficient initially while they're first figuring out the new regulations and kind of how the car works within them. And one of the things that some teams have done over previous years is not put the drink and not put the cooling system and reduce that weight by your driver just kind of being a badass and just like sticking it out through dehydration and sweating out a ton of liquid. I think it's a good decision in terms of driver safety. We're always looking for those improvements and everything, so to regulate that, I definitely think is a positive, especially with how we've added some really particularly toasty races to the calendar. But I think it will, like you said, be kind of interesting to see with this shakedown with testing and everything, if some of those weights and whatnot shift how these cars are working on the track.
Yeah, big safety meeting moment in that regard, and just something to pay attention to because yeah, now they're not going to be able to run that risk. You remember who was it? Sergio Perez. He was like, "My drink broke early in the race." They're asking him like, "Oh, hey Sergio, like how was that start?" He's like, "My drink broke. I had to do the whole race like this. Quite frankly, I feel awful." Like he just kept telling
Yeah.
everybody that he had no drink. That's never going to happen again, thanks to the new regulations for this year.
The drink can still break, but it's got to be there at least.
Good point. Good point. Okay. More running for rookies. Time is now doubled. Like whatever the previous was, it's now doubled. I think it's like now 4
Yeah, it
opportunities
was
total.
two P1 sessions per seat had to be given to a young driver or an alternate kind of person.
Being defined as somebody with fewer than 2 F1 like racing opportunities. So that's interesting. Just getting like more, young talent into the cars. For now, this one I think is like very key. This is like tightening up a loophole. Tighter DRS and wing restrictions. It is now just a flat open or closed. No more of this like, well, it's like kind of dangling open and that's okay for us kind of, There's no more of that. It's just a binary open or close now. So they like restricted how they look at those wings. There's more like technical details available, but that's just like the gist of it. They've changed the options for classifying a qualifying session. I doubt it'll really ever apply, but it's just so they can get like better alignment of the grid if there's like inclement weather. There is now, go ahead.
I like that change actually because like for this past season when they ended up doing qualifying the morning of the race and everything because it got rained out after the sprint race and whatnot. I like that because you're not potentially damaging the qualifying session by forcing, I think like Alex Albon crashed in that qualifying session and was unable to get the car back onto the grid ahead of it and whatnot. Instead, their game plan is to just go and do qualifying or race start order will be based on the drivers championship order, which I think is generally gonna put things in a lot more normal of a spot than trying to rush around to get this qualifying session done and in the books, even if it's not as good of a safety or as smart of a decision in that aspect to run that session. They're not like, well, we got to do it. They kind of have this alternative there if they need to. And I think that's another positive change with that rule there.
Okay, yeah, those are very interesting thoughts. Yeah, okay, yeah, I wasn't quite thinking of it in that way, but yeah, no, those are great examples. So yeah, definitely a useful rule change now I would regard that as. And then one less important one, a mule car tire test. That means at the end of the year, there's going to be a test to specifically look at the next year's tires or like a future year's tires where they're like just slotting out time for that in the rule set. Why that was made as one of the of note rules, unsure. More of just like a safety element.
And I think that's also like previous, or at least in the last couple of years, they've just chosen a few specific, like, I think it's FP1 or maybe even FP2 sessions throughout the years where they have give teams the opportunity to test these like future tires and whatnot and they get data from the compounds and whatnot. And I think that is, like just easier to get quality data at the end of the season with all these tires together. I guess you lose out on the opportunity to get that data in different temperatures and different like weather and whatnot. But I think overall, that's better than just being like, well, this week you kind of have the option to just lose out on a practice session because we want you to test these tires. So that I think that saves them a little bit from that would be what I imagine the primary reason would be.
Okay, gotcha. So instead of sprinkling it in throughout the year, you lump it all in at the end to just get more reliable, more consistent data, and then you don't have to take anything away from the teams throughout the year.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the main reason.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. And then the last one that I pulled out here was gearbox limitations removed. I believe, Aaron, you and I were talking about that. So of the pieces of equipment that had limitations, that one now you won't be penalized for if you have to. Well, there is no allotment anymore, so there will be no penalty. But like other pieces of equipment, if you go over the amount allotted, you would get penalized on the grid for it, no longer for gearboxes. So yeah, that's an interesting one as well. So no more wonky like, taking this weekend off basically, or like resigning ourselves to the back of the grid and then whatever happens, these types of things. At least with gearboxes, it won't add up in that regard. But yeah, those were just a couple of interesting rules as I was perusing that stood out. So yeah, I think some rule changes better than others, but yeah, a couple safety ones. But that's what we're looking for forward to moving into 25. Some of the things that have changed.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that kind of covers the majority of what we were looking to discuss. I had thrown together some kind of blind expectations for kind of where I expect things to shake out. But I think it may just be a little bit better to wait until we have some preseason testing, get a little bit of an idea of what's out there and what these cars are looking like and all before we dive too deep into that. But any other kind of final notes or things you wanted to hit here with the off season and pre-testing episode we've got going?
Yeah, I'll hit you with a couple things here. So, first off, just looking ahead, what we have on the calendar up next is the Bahrain test. That's what all eyes are on here. Couple things if you're watching, just a couple things to take note of. Pace of the cars. Are there any notable upticks in performance? Any notable downticks in performance? Because they have the grid running the whole time as like timings are running. Teams are going to be testing out different elements of their car on long runs, short runs, fast pace, slow pace. You're going to see teams like running all variation of run plans. You'll get a sense when you're watching of what teams are doing, like qualification simulators, and these are the ones you want to pay attention to. Like, okay, like where are teams shaking out in these, like on these types of runs, and that's where you can see like, okay, who's like where I expect them to be, who's maybe down on that. I'm thinking rookies, man. Big eye on the rookies. Who's making mistakes? What's their team radio like? Are they panicked? Are they stressed? Are they calm? Are they cool? Do they have sort of a Piastri type vibe about them, seeming kind of unbothered? So, like, my eye mainly going to be on the rookies and how they're performing, with everybody on the grid all at one time. Like, these are 3 really busy days. So we've got 6 guys on the grid that I'm keeping my eye out on more than usual at this upcoming Bahrain test. So just some things to keep an eye on there. Going into the week, we've got 3 days in Bahrain under the sun of some good Formula One testing. So I'm excited for that. But I just wanna, here's something I'm thinking about sprinkling in throughout the year. And if this is the only one we do, well, hey, that's fine. So we're gonna cash this one in at the end of the year. I'm gonna shout out an analyst named Chad Burchill for this one. So we're gonna go for what are the odds here, Aaron? I'm gonna pose a question to you. What are the odds of a back-to-back for McLaren in the Constructors' Championship? What's your percentage on that? What do you think? Give me your thoughts.
Ooh. I'll give them a 50% shot, 2-1 odds that they will win the Constructors, and I think there's potential for some of the other teams, but I think that my reasoning primarily is you're seeing Ferrari with that I kind of expect to be the most competitive because they have Leclerc and Lewis and were very competitive at the end of last season. That's kind of going to be my next up contender. And I think there's an outside shot with Red Bull and Mercedes, but a lot of that comes down to that second driver for both of those teams, Kimi Antonelli and Liam Lawson, and how they perform. So I think that definitely pushes it in McLaren's favor, but I still think there's some outside shots for some of these other teams there.
Interesting. So giving them 2-1 odds, 50% chance. So you're just.
I mean, 2-1 in a 2-1 in a 10 team, like 50% chance that they will be the winner, and that other 50% split among the other 9 teams. I feel like is decently like heavy odds.
Yeah, all right. When you pose it like that, I think I'm gonna go. I was gonna go a little higher than this, but I'm thinking the back-to-back potential 65%. I think it's strong with this group. We've seen Lewis got to hit some back-to-backs. We've seen Max do some back-to-back. So I think it's McLaren's time, specifically just for the Constructors' Championship. I think the lineup that they have with Norris and Piastri is strong. So my orange stocks are a little higher. So I'm gonna go a 65% chance here of the back-to-back Constructors victory. Now we'll just see, if the number is who is closest. We'll check back in at that at the end of the year and see how well we did, how good our temperature test of this useless question. We'll see how good our temperature reading was. But that's what are the odds here for the Tired Boys podcast. But as far as the Bahrain test and things moving forward, I'm just excited to see what we've got, what kind of pace we've got in the rookies. And I mean, nothing really matters until you see everybody driving on track. So what's even the use of pontificating in that regard? Like we just got to see it happen, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there's a lot that we'll find out more so than previous years with this upcoming Bahrain test, especially with that large amount of young drivers. I mean, there's also the teammate pairings to keep an eye on, like Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon, to see how they compare in terms of their drive and equal machinery. I think that'll give us a little more insight onto both of them, since they're both quality veteran drivers. Similarly with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, it'll be interesting to see if Lewis is going to have the same pace as Charles right out of the gate, or kind of how close he is there. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to all of the upcoming season, but the testing here will give us some fun insight into the season here.
Big time agree. Now, good sir, would you like to do a cool down lap here at the end of the episode, or would you just like to leave it at that and just look ahead to the next episode?
No, let's hit a quick little cool down lap. So we've got the rose, thorn, and seed for everyone this week. I'll lead off, I guess, with my rose, which one of the exciting things that I'm just been thinking about. You and I have put a lot of time and thought kind of throughout the off season on some different changes, updates. We've got some quality of life kind of things that we've done with some updates for the video overlay for you video viewers out there on YouTube and everything. Some changes with some of the softwares and things that we're using. And so I'm excited for seeing how we can utilize those things to just make the viewer quality even better for this year and everything. So that's my rose for this week. My thorn, to be honest, I don't have too much of a thorn going on. Like it's been a nice off season, kind of getting everything together for the upcoming season. Work is work, life is good. So I really don't have too much in terms of a thorn there. But my seed, I'm just ready to kind of dive in. I'm excited to see how everything shapes up in this upcoming season. I'm excited. I thought you were going to ask me the odds of Max winning the championship again. I was like calculating in my brain. But no, I'm ready to see, I think, a really competitive F1 season. I think this past year was one of the most competitive that you and I have seen, and probably one of the most competitive in many, many years in Formula One. I'm hoping that we can kind of continue on that same trajectory with this season and have a really exciting title fight between a number of different teams, a number of different drivers. So I'm just itching to get the racing and cars on track, rubber to road and everything this year. But that's my rose, thorn, and seed this week.
Very good place to be, man. No thorns in your side. Just looking forward to some good racing, and just seeing how how just a little bit more elbow grease. See how far that can get us. So yeah, I like it. My rose here for the week, just kind of in line with that, just doing my best to be like forward thinking as far as like just general gratefulness. I feel like I take a lot of things for granted in my life, and sometimes I need to be reminded that, maybe things are okay and the sky's not falling. And sometimes that reminder has to come from myself. So just doing my best to just be daily, just like daily gratitude, these types of things. My thorn here for the week is tax season be upon us. All ye merry faithful, man, woman, or child, nobody can escape from it. Death and taxes eternal. And that season springs once again. My seed here for the week, I've been locked in on this new massage practice that I've been working on. It's like I've decided it's my focus, it's what's gonna be my thing. And I've had a good amount of work kind of getting it off the ground, some initial practice, some initial like thoughts, feelings, and ideas about it. So that seed is planted, sir, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I've just really am excited for 2025 in that regard. Just looking to expand and just get better and just improve the quality of people's lives. That's what I'm looking forward to. So yeah, pretty decent rose thorn and seed here for you this week, but yeah, it's just good to be back in the in the cockpit, as it were.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the upcoming season. I'm very excited for the rest of the year and all it has in store for us. We're very excited to have you all along for the ride with us. So we appreciate anyone taking the time to listen, hang out, and then hopefully connect with us over these Formula One races and all that's in store this season. So thank you.
New for 2025, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. Find us there if you're on audio. Join us in the Formula One journey. Just thank you for the support. This is another episode of the Tyred Boys podcast. Thank you for listening. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.